Hi there. Let me go ahead and send messages so everyone knows it's starting. Messages. That's not the right one. That's not the right one. Where is it? Mhm. Let me just do it this way. I cannot find the Discord group on. All right, so while we wait for people, I guess I'll go ahead and start with some of the questions I already had. So hold on just a second. What is the biggest change your main character has experienced recently? And then for this one, I chose for Amy having to choose between her best friend slash crush and the sister she looked up to, but that ultimately lied and hurt her. Let me see what other character questions I have here. Hold on. This one was more of a general writing question. Do I like to have pop culture references in my writing? Sometimes, mostly music and theater references. I am a little bit of a theater dork, and I really like musicals. So, music and musical related stuff. Here's another one. Does your main character's age correspond with your age? So, I think for a lot of my earlier works, yeah, it did to the they did to the for the most part. Like when I was writing Rosa Spellbound initially, I had made Rosa's character match up with her age match up with my age at the time. But by the time I actually got around to editing and publishing it or decided I wanted to edit and publish it, I was much older than Rose. Um, and she was initially supposed to be 18, and I, per an editor's request, had changed it, but I'm planning on redoing that book and changing it back to what I had originally had because it just makes more sense for her. What's an easy way for someone to get on your main character's bad side that does not involve anything illegal, hurting someone they care about, or hurting them? And for Rose, I would probably say if you steal or take her food without asking. Rose does not like to share food, and she is a huge foodie. She would be very upset if you take any of her food. For Amy, probably messing up the display in her store or just being really loud or overly affectionate. She is not into hugging, which when you read Amy's Rebellion, you'll notice in like the first couple of chapters. For Naru, I would say it's probably damaging her camera or any of her video games, or when men try to hit on her after she's already told them that she's a lesbian. So, do I have any others? Let's see. Here's another one. What type of music does your main character like, or what would they like? So for Naru, she would be the type that would be into kind of a little bit of everything, but I think the main thing she would like would be like EDM music and indie rock. Amy, she would be into like, I don't know how I would describe it, but if you've ever heard like I'm not sure if I pronounced it this right, but Rainieri's music, um, probably that, and also maybe like a lot of pop punk. So think like kind of Icon for Hire stuff, maybe a little bit of Paramore. She'd be into that sort of thing. For Iris, I think they would be mostly into like emo rock music and just musicals, just every musical, all musicals. Rose, for her time period, I would say classical music, but if she ended up living in modern times for some reason, probably she'd be into R&B. I'll continue going through whatever questions I do have. If we don't have anybody come in today, I'll end once we finish those questions. How fast can your character run? Amy is not much of a runner. She is more of a walker, and I would say she's kind of a slow runner. Um, like Iris and Naru could definitely lap her several times. Iris would be great at sprinting, but they cannot do long distance running worth a crud. Like after about maybe 10, 15 minutes, they're done. Rose can't run mostly because for very fast or very long because of medical conditions, but she's a very good climber. Gabriel is a great runner when his leg isn't broken because he's a courier, so he kind of has to be pretty fit. Um, he's a pretty decent runner. Where does your character go to get away from it all? So for Opal, it was always the forest to practice archery and decompress. She kind of just likes the quiet of it and just to be away from everything. Amy, she's more mountains. She likes to go to the mountains. She likes to go to her shop. For her, retreat could also just be working on like her gemstone creations, her necklaces and things. But she tends to like those areas. For Naru, probably any sort of just beautiful scenery because she does a lot of photography. But also just the video game arcade. Like when she was growing up, if she was feeling frustrated with everything, she would go and hang out at the arcade. Iris, I don't know. Iris doesn't really have very many like places where they would get away from it all. If anything, I think they kind of prefer to be around people, at least before the experimentation happens. For them, it would have been pre experimentation. It would have probably been going and being packed in a city with a lot of people. But post the experimentation, Iris probably would find like a very isolated area to be more relaxing. Maybe even like an abandoned city because they liked that city life. Which is ironic because they were raised in like a desert, basically, but they were always very close to cities. How many weddings has your main character attended? I don't think any of my characters have attended any weddings. I don't know if that's just me and my personal like experiences coming through with that because I really haven't gone to that many weddings myself. I think I've been to 2, and that was it. Because Amy wasn't alive when her parents' wedding happened, and Iris like they like it's not very common in the shifter community to have like marriage in the same sense that we would have marriage. It was just more like a, I guess, more similar to like a domestic partnership, what they would have. Also, the shifter community is very much polyamorous, so very different kind of way that things are set up. And then Rose, I mean, Rose lived in a greenhouse her whole life, so she really wouldn't have had very much time to attend weddings. Oh, this is a good one. What is the most mental, emotional pain that your character has been in? Let me pick ones that don't have too many spoilers because for Amy, I would say probably when she thought that a friend of hers was dead, when she found out that they were dead. For Rose, probably realizing that she was trapped was very heartbreaking. Realizing that she was trapped where she was, that it wasn't just a lie that she'd been told. For Dusk, finding out that he was lied to and that the person he looked up to didn't respect him the way that he thought she did. Who else am I missing? I mean, for Iris, probably realizing they could no longer control their abilities after they'd been experimented on. I think that's it for the characters that I can think of. On a scale of 1 to 10, how friendly is your main character? Oh gosh. I'm going to put Rose on the lower end. She's friendly, but only after she knows you a little bit. I'm going to say she's like maybe a 3 or a 4. Amy ranges between a 2 and a 4. If you try to hug her, she's like a 1. Iris, on the other hand, is probably like an 8 or a 9. Iris really likes being around people. And who else do we have? Gabriel, I'm going to say, is like somewhere in the middle. He's like a 5 or 6. But after you get to know him a little bit, he's like a 10. Like bordering on needy. I'm trying to think who else. I guess for Hunter and Grimheld in Snow's Captive, I would say Hunter is probably like a 7 for like how level of friendliness. And I would say Grimheld is like a 5. Grimheld's like neutral. She's kind of in the middle. How much power do local governments have in your world? Are they mainly symbolic? Do they have more power than the central federal government? That's a little complicated because for Amy's rebellion, there are different levels. So there's at the clan or at that particular like region level. So like the shifters in one region have their own leader. And the shifters in another region have their own leader. But then they have a leader for like the overall shifters. So I would say like the leaders for that particular region have the most power over anything that happens locally. If it's something minor. So like let's say that one of the shifters is caught stealing food from like a pantry in their particular city. It would be the person that's in charge of that particular region of shifters that would deal with that. But if like someone goes and murders somebody, that would go to the council, which would be like the person who is the shifter, the leader of like all of the shifters, would be one of the main people dealing with it along with the rest of the Magic Council, with the leader of the Magic Council counting as 2 votes. So it's basically like a big council system for any sort of major things like murder, which you kind of get to see a little bit of in Amy's story about her childhood. Now, Rose, on the other hand, it's more kind of based on reality. The only difference being like there are nymphs, so the nymphs kind of have their own government system. But with the Nymphs Revenge series, it's very much like industrial era kind of government, very capitalist sort of thing going on. And with the nymphs themselves, they rule themselves more independently. So each forest has what's called a guardian, and they usually also will have a co guardian. So the nymphs guardian is the one that's supposed to keep the forest safe. And that's usually determined by like the ancient nymphs, the ones who were like the first of the nymphs, which because they haven't been seen in so long, a lot of people don't believe they exist anymore. A lot of nymphs don't believe they're in existence anymore, but they're the ones who like decide who gets to be the guardians. And the co-guardians are usually either picked by the guardians or picked by those same governing bodies, the elder nymphs, so to speak. And the co-guardian and guardian are in charge of keeping the forest safe, but also on keeping everyone in the forest in line, like not interfering with stuff that they're not supposed to interfere with. All right, we'll do a couple more character questions, and then we're going to go ahead and end for tonight. What kind of aesthetic do your characters have? Okay. Well, I think Amy is all about the comfort. She's got kind of borderline hippy dippy like aesthetic vibes. Likes a lot of like flowy clothes, yoga pants, anything comfortable and flowy. Naru is more of the like has to be show offy, has to be colorful, very like lots of blacks and neons and leather boots and all of that. Like she'd be the person who would show up in like those 6-inch leather heels and chains and bright neon colors. That is her thing. Um Iris is kind of just Iris is Iris. They don't have an aesthetic. They can never pick an aesthetic. But they like lots of rainbow. And they also really like to change their hair color a lot. They like to have a lot of piercings. Although with their shifting being the way it is now, they can't wear them anymore, but they used to have like a nose piercing and a whole bunch of ear piercings. But after they got injured one too many times, when they would shift unexpectedly, they don't really wear them anymore. Dusk is very emo style, emo aesthetic all the way, very My Cami type aesthetic. All right, last question. What is motivating your character? What is your character's motivation? Well, I mean, for Rose, in the first one, it was just freedom, getting out of her situation. Uh, Amy, it's like a little bit of revenge, a little bit of freedom, a little bit of just being understood. Opal is all about the revenge. Motivation is just full on revenge. Um, Dusk, probably just being respected and understood, being cared for. He really just wants his own little community that where he can fit in. Like that's his motivation behind a lot of what he does. Iris is kind of the same too. Really just wants a place to fit in after the experimentations happen. And they kind of do find it a little bit with Amy. I think they also are very much a people pleaser and want to help a lot. So that's a big motivator for Iris. Naru. Naru is motivated by whatever's entertaining. She likes to start shit, and she has some serious anger issues. Like, she is the true definition of following the dopamine. That is the motivation behind everything Naru does. Is just following the dopamine, following the dopamine. Okay, I think that's all I'm going to do for now since we don't have anybody here, and that's all of the questions I've got. So I hope you enjoyed. You could always look back and check out all the questions that have been answered. And if I missed anything, you can comment down below. All right, thanks. Bye.